It used to feel we had it made.
Whatever happened to the wild boys who once ruled MTV? You probably remember them from the 80s then. Nothing. But that's not the whole story. 5 guys from Birmingham sold over 100 million records, conquered the world, then faced changes that nearly destroyed them. What nobody tells you, they never actually broke up.
Yes, I do.
You probably remember them from MTV in the 80s then. Nothing. But that's not the whole story. These guys are still here, still making music, and their journey is way more surprising than you remember. We're talking about the band that basically invented the music video as art form and changed how the world saw British pop music. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2022. Over 100 million records sold worldwide. 2 Grammy Awards. But behind all that success, drama you wouldn't believe. Lineup changes that should have killed the band. Creative battles. Legal fights. And a comeback story that proves sometimes breaking apart makes you stronger. I'm about to tell you what really happened to Simon Le Bon, Nick Rhodes, John Taylor, Roger Taylor, and Andy Taylor. Plus the guys who joined later, Warren Cuccurullo, Sterling Campbell, and Don Brown. You'll discover connections to David Bowie you never knew existed, recording secrets that took decades to reveal, and why the biggest crisis in 1986 actually saved their career. From a nightclub in Birmingham to global superstars to near collapse to resurrection. This is the real story of Duran Duran. The story of how 5 friends became icons, lost each other, then found their way back. What happened behind the scenes was more dramatic than any music video they ever made. But wait, it gets crazier. Let's start at the beginning.
You've gone too far this time. But I tell you, somebody's fooling around with my chain.
Let's go back to 1978. 2 teenagers, Nick Rhodes and John Taylor, working at a nightclub called Rum Runner in Birmingham, England. They're watching punk bands like the Sex Pistols tear up the music scene. But instead of copying them, they ask, what if we take punk's raw power but make it glamorous? These weren't your typical rock stars. Nick Rhodes was obsessed with synthesizers. Weird for 1978. John Taylor played bass like it was a lead guitar. When they recruited Simon Le Bon as vocalist in 1980, everything clicked. The guy had this voice that could hit notes you didn't know existed. Add Roger Taylor on drums. No relation to John, just confusing. And Andy Taylor on guitar. And boom, you've got the classic lineup. 5 guys who look like they stepped out of fashion magazine, but could play like their lives depended on it. Then came 1982, the album Rio. What most fans don't know is that album almost didn't happen. The band produced it themselves first, and it was terrible. Complete disaster. So they brought in Nile Rodgers, the genius behind Chic, to remix the whole thing. The Reflex alone took 21 attempts before producer Trevor Horn got it right. 21 attempts. But when it worked, it really worked. Hungry Like the Wolf exploded on MTV. The music video looked like a Hollywood movie, and American kids couldn't get enough. Music videos weren't just promotional tools anymore. They were art. That's when everything changed. 7, and the Ragged Tiger hit #1 in the UK in 1983. By 1985, they're recording the theme song for a James Bond movie, A View to a Kill. It goes straight to #1 in America, making it the only Bond theme ever to top the US charts. Not even Paul McCartney managed that. They're living the dream. Private jets, screaming fans, magazine covers. The perfect pop band. But all that success came with a price. The pressure was building behind the scenes.
And just like that river twisting.
By 1985, the cracks were showing. The stress was building up. These guys were barely in their 20s, dealing with more money and attention than most people see in a lifetime. In a 2021 Guardian interview, the band admitted something shocking. Nearly every band like us ends up destroying themselves. The highs and lows of fame, the constant touring, the media attention. It was taking its toll. What actually happened was more intense than anyone realized. Roger Taylor, the drummer who'd been with them since almost beginning, was burning out. The endless touring, the pressure to keep delivering hits, the exhaustion of being in one of the world's biggest bands. It was crushing him, but nobody saw what was coming. Andy Taylor, meanwhile, was having creative fights with the rest of the band. He wanted to go more rock, more guitar-heavy. Nick Rhodes and the others were pushing deeper into synthesizer territory. Two different visions for the same band. Then came April 1986. Roger Taylor made a decision that shocked everyone. He quit, just walked away from Duran Duran at the height of their fame. But that's when everything changed. What Andy Taylor did next would change everything and set up the most dramatic period in the band's history. Nobody saw what happened next. When Roger left in April 1986, the band was scrambling. You can't just replace the drummer of Duran overnight, but they tried to keep going as a four-piece, thinking maybe Andy Taylor would step up and help hold things together. Instead, Andy dropped his own bombshell. He'd secretly signed a solo deal with MCA Records. While the band was trying to figure out their next move, their guitarist was planning his escape. The creative tensions that had been simmering for years finally boiled over. Andy wanted Duran Duran to sound like a rock band. Nick Rhodes, the musical mastermind, was pushing them toward more experimental electronic sounds. The tension got so bad that when it came time to record their next album, they literally had to drag Andy into the studio through legal pressure. He barely contributed to what became Notorious. Then, at the end of 1986, he was gone too. The band tried to keep going, but the cracks were getting bigger. Suddenly, Duran Duran, one of the biggest bands in the world, was down to just three guys: Simon Le Bon, Nick Rhodes, and John Taylor. Half the classic lineup. Gone in 8 months. This should have been the end. Most bands don't survive losing two core members. The real story is they brought in Warren Cuccurullo on guitar, a guy who'd played with Frank Zappa. So, you know he could handle weird music. For drums, they got Sterling Campbell, who would later become David Bowie's drummer through the 90s. More on that connection in a minute. Notorious came out in October 1986. It hit number 16 in the UK, but barely cracked the top 50 for 1 week. After years of automatic hits, this felt like failure. The magic formula was broken. Andy Taylor, meanwhile, released his solo album Thunder in 1987 and had some success, especially with his collaboration with Rod Stewart. But there's more to it. The remaining three members of Duran weren't giving up. Sometimes breaking apart forces you to rediscover what made you special in the first place. What most fans don't know is that Sterling Campbell, Duran Duran's drummer from 1989 to 1991, became the bridge between the band and David Bowie. After leaving Duran Duran, Sterling joined Bowie's band for Black Tie White Noise in 1993 and stayed to the 2000s. But the influence worked both ways. Sterling brought something special from his time with Bowie back to Duran Duran during the recording of the Wedding album in 1993. Remember Come Undone? That jazz funk layer, that different sound? That's Sterling's Bowie influence mixing with Duran's pop sensibilities. The album sold over 3 million copies and proved they could reinvent themselves. Ordinary World became a massive hit, #1 on the adult contemporary charts in the UK. It showed a more mature Duran Duran, dealing with real emotions instead of just party anthems. The song was about loss, about growing up, about surviving when everything around you changes. Pretty fitting for a band that had lost half its members. But wait, it gets crazier. Success in the 90s came with new challenges. John Taylor was dealing with personal issues, a divorce that affected his creativity. Plus, he'd started his own record label, B5 Records, and was juggling solo projects. The pressure of keeping Duran Duran relevant while building his own empire was wearing him down. By 1997, John made his own shocking exit. At DuranCon, the band's fan convention, he announced he was leaving. The bassist who co-founded the band with Nick Rhodes, who'd survived the 1986 crisis, was walking away. Suddenly, Duran Duran was down to just Simon and Nick, plus Warren Cuccurullo on guitar. They tried to continue as a trio, Medazzaland in 1997 had some interesting moments. Electric Barbarella was actually one of the first songs ever released as an internet download. But without John's bass lines, something essential was missing. Pop Trash in 2000 only hit number 53 in the UK. For the first time in their career, Duran Duran felt like they were truly fading away. The boys who conquered MTV were becoming a nostalgia act.
For you.
2001 changed everything. John Taylor came back. Not just John, they convinced Andy Taylor to return too. For the first time since 1985, all 5 original members of Duran were in the same room again. The reunion wasn't just about nostalgia. These guys had grown up, dealt with their personal issues, and realized something important. What they created together was bigger than their individual egos. The album they made, Astronaut in 2004, proved it. It hit number 3 in the UK and number 17 in the US, their highest chart positions in almost 2 decades. The single Sunrise went to number 5 in the UK. After years of experimental sounds and lineup changes, they found their way back to what made them special. Great songs, tight performances, and that chemistry that happens when the right people come together. But this reunion had a twist. Roger Taylor was back too, but Andy Taylor's return was temporary. The creative differences that split them in 1986 hadn't completely disappeared. By 2006, Andy was gone again. This time, though it wasn't dramatic, he'd helped them prove they still had magic. But his heart was in other projects. Enter Don Brown on guitar. Unlike the revolving door members in the 90s, Don became a true part of the family. He's been touring with them since 2001 and became a full member in 2006. The current lineup, Simon, Nick, John, Roger, and Dom, has been stable for almost 20 years now. That's longer than some of the classic 80s version lasted. They kept evolving. All You Need Is Now in 2010 was produced by Mark Ronson and reminded everyone why these guys mattered. Paper Gods in 2015 featured collaborations with artists like Janelle Monáe. Then Future Past in 2021 showed they could still surprise people. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally recognized them in 2022. Robert Downey Jr. inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after 44 years in the business. They were finally getting the respect they deserved as pioneers, not just 80s nostalgia. So where are they now? All 5 original members are still alive and making music, though their paths have taken different directions. Simon Le Bon, now 67, still lives in London and remains the voice of Duran Duran. He's married to model Yasmin Le Bon, and after all these years, his voice still hits those high notes. Nick Rhodes, 63, is also in London, still the keyboard wizard and visual mastermind behind the band style. John Taylor, 65, moved to Los Angeles and has become the band's American connection. He released a solo album called Retribution in 2020 and stays active on social media, connecting with fans. Roger Taylor, also 65, went back to Birmingham but never stopped drumming. He's a quiet one, but still the heartbeat of their sound. Don Brown, 52, has been their touring guitarist since 2001 and brings a fresh energy that keeps the band current. He's got side projects with bands like Motherside, but Duran Duran is his main focus. And Andy Taylor? This is where the story gets emotional. Andy, now living in Ibiza, Spain, has been battling stage for prostate cancer since 2018. But the truth is he hasn't given up on music. In 2023, he collaborated with the band on Danse Macabre, contributing to tracks even while dealing with his health challenges. The relationship between Andy and the rest of the band has come full circle. Where there used to be tension and creative differences, now there's what Andy calls pure love and respect. They've all grown up, dealt with their issues, and realized that life's too short for old grudges. Warren Cuccurullo, who played with them through the 90s, also contributed to Danse Macabre. It was like a family reunion. All the pieces of Duran Duran's history coming together one more time. They're still touring. The 2025 dates include shows across Europe and North America. At their ages, everyone's in their 60s now. They could easily retire and live off their legacy, but they're not ready to stop. As John Taylor said in a recent interview, this was supposed to be a young person's game, but we're still here. From the Rum Runner nightclub to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's the real story of Duran Duran, not just another 80s band that burned out and faded away, but survivors who proved that true artistry outlasts trends. Their influence is everywhere today. Lady Gaga credits their theatricality and visual innovation. The Killer's Brandon Flowers admits they shaped his approach to pop rock. Arctic Monkeys learned from their balance of being both easy to enjoy and experimental. Even today's TikTok stars use techniques Duran Duran pioneered in their MTV videos. They sold over 100 million records, but more importantly, they showed that you could be intelligent and popular, experimental and commercial, British and global. They survived lineup changes that would have killed most bands. They adapted to new decades without losing what made them special. The Wild Boys prove that legends don't fade, they evolve. From new wave pioneers to elder statesmen of rock, they've never stopped moving forward. Even Andy Taylor's health battle shows their resilience. Instead of letting it end the story, they turned it into another chapter of collaboration and mutual respect. Which era of Duran Duran meant the most to you? Was it those early MTV videos that first caught your attention? The experimental 90s when they were proving they were more than just pretty faces? Or maybe the reunion tours when you got to see the classic lineup back together? And what actually surprised you the most? Andy Taylor's solo success and eventual return? John Taylor's departure and comeback? Or maybe Warren Cuccurullo's contribution during those transitional years? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed uncovering the real story behind one of the 80s most iconic bands, hit that subscribe button. There are more untold stories waiting, and the truth is always more interesting than the legend.